For a great deal on your next real estate purchase? Have you heard that you might get a better deal if you can go directly to the listing agent? Well, I'm Josh with Josh Lavik and Associates, your source for all things real estate. And in this video, I'll be covering how to get the very best deal in your next real estate transaction. Hey there, just wanted to talk a little bit more about how to get a great deal on your next real estate purchase. So I wanted to go through just a few tips and tricks that I've noticed over the years in selling real estate in the Madison area for the last 20 years now and helping hundreds of clients throughout that time. First thing is first, you definitely want to have a pretty in-depth conversation with your agent, whether it's myself or another agent on my team or whoever, and really get to tell them exactly what's important to you in a new home, both in terms of pricing, location, bedrooms, bathrooms, style, aesthetics, lot size, all that stuff. Everything is important, but you can have a pretty narrowly defined criteria of what is an ideal fit. But I would just encourage you to not be too narrow in what defining that is. So you want it somewhat broad so that you don't possibly miss out on something that might be a good opportunity. So I often tell people that, if you can get, 8 or 9 of the 10 things that you want in a new property, that's totally a win. I mean, even sometimes a 6 or a 7 might be a win if you're willing to make certain other trade-offs. So, sometimes, if it's either location or size or condition, at some point there's probably some type of need to move that you're going to need to make as you're looking at homes and looking to buy a new property. Okay, so with that in mind, you're out there, you're searching for homes, both you and your agent, and working on trying to find the best deal. All right, what do we do next? So next we want to do is, next tip I would say is move quickly on any new listings that might be a good fit, okay? Odds are if you think they're a good fit for you, they might be a good fit for someone else. And so, moving quickly, I've seen, lots of properties out there sometimes can sell within a matter of a couple days or sometimes even less. Sometimes first day on the market, they might get an offer. And, you don't want to miss out on that opportunity if you think it's a good fit. If it's not a good fit, then it's not a big deal. Or if you think maybe the price is way too high, right? Like, oh my gosh, that's way too much for that house, or depending on what you have come up with. If you think it's priced too high, well, then maybe wait a little bit. You can always revisit that property if it doesn't sell right away. Or sometimes maybe that property, you might notice it at first, but maybe think the price is high. Sometimes that property might also have a price adjustment. So at some point in the future, maybe, if that price gets dropped or price reduced at some point, then maybe it's worth revisiting again. And so again, don't wait too long, right? If that price drops, that's absolutely a good cue to you as a potential buyer that, hey, there's some motivation here from the seller and they obviously want to sell and move this property. So, again, moving quickly on either those new listings or anything that had a recent price adjustment. I'd consider you to consider maybe some off-market properties. Now, I got about a half a dozen properties right now that are coming soon on the market here in the next month. And I have access to hundreds of others that I know about that are coming soon as well. Fine anywhere. Okay. So, but you could do is sometimes you can make an offer, actually a sight unseen offer, and actually get into that property before it even hits the market. So it doesn't happen all the time, but sometimes it's a good possibility. The other option and some opportunity I've helped people with sometimes in the past is with off-market properties is like what we call sell. The seller tried to sell this property with at one point in the past. It didn't sell for one reason or another. And so now they're just maybe waiting, taking it off the market, whatever. So those sometimes can be good properties to reconsider and make an offer when it's not even technically on the market because it's not out there and you're not in competition with other potential buyers. So again, that's another option for considering off-market properties. So the other thing that I'll just say also is, whether it's a newly listed property or something that had a recent price adjustment or an off-market property, or maybe just a regular on-market property, you want to have a process for quickly determining value. So part of my role as an agent is to help locate, negotiate, and procure an interest in a property. But also, again, that negotiation piece is pricing and giving pricing advice around value of a property. So we've got our team, we've developed a 5 or 6 step process, a pretty streamlined approach in terms of how we determine value for a property. And then sharing that with our clients, we do that quickly to help determine what we think is a good potential offer price, and then being able to make that decision right away. So having a good, quick process is definitely helpful in getting a great deal. All right, and the last thing I'll just mention is something that might be kind of intuitive to you, and you'll learn it if you're out there looking at properties, and if you notice that maybe you're looking and there's a lot of different options, right? Doesn't happen all the time, but maybe you've decided, you're looking in a specific area, a specific price range, and there's maybe a bunch of different options, right? So we call this thinking about your next best alternative, right? So if you come across one property that you think is an ideal fit, but if you don't act quickly and you don't make an offer on it right away, how many other alternatives do you have, right? So just thinking about, what's your best alternative to negotiating an agreement with the one specific property. And this is where, inventory levels will definitely play a role in this. The higher the inventory levels are, the more options and opportunities there are, and you can kind of, take your time and be a little more choosy. More seller's market where there's low inventory, this is when there's not as many options and fewer choices. So your next best alternative is what? You either maybe you consider staying in your current home or renting for a longer time frame, or you make some kind of concessions on, what your ideal. And so, getting a great deal really means just balancing the right trade-offs that you're willing to make based on your ideal fit and the property. So if you're buying a new home or condo, you probably want a good deal, right? I mean, if you're like many curious people, then you might believe you can get a better deal if you go directly to the listing agent rather than having a buyer's agent on your side. Well, let's explore that. I mean, what if you were interested in one of my listings, right? Now, these are properties where the seller has hired me to sell the property for them. And in Wisconsin, this could be considered dual agency, right? Where there would only be potentially one agent involved. And you might be wondering, is this legal? Is this allowed? Well, that's a good thing to wonder, right? I mean, could be considered a conflict of interest. I mean, if you were getting divorced, would you just hire one attorney to handle both sides? I mean, I'll be honest, I have done this in the past, and going forward, I think it's a bad idea. And in some states, it's not even allowed at all. Because at some point, someone will likely feel slighted. I mean, maybe you're wondering, whose side am I really on? And that's why, right? Because in most real estate deals, there's usually two agents involved. One representing the seller, called the listing agent, and one representing the buyer, the buyer. The other thing you should know is the word fiduciary, right? And if you've worked with financial planners before, you maybe have heard that term, or if you've worked with attorneys before, you've maybe heard that term. But fiduciary means that's where your duty lies, right? Your highest duty as an agent, as an attorney, as a financial planner is owed to someone. And the hard part about one agent, being involved in both the buyer and the seller side is that it's really hard for both parties to feel like you're their fiduciary, right? Whose interest ultimately is that agent with, right? And that's where somebody feels ultimately slighted sometimes. And so the benefit of having two agents involved is that, you have a seller whose fiduciary, a listing agent whose fiduciary responsibility is to that seller. And as a buyer, your fiduciary responsibility is to that you as a buyer, and your interest as a buyer above anybody else's. So that's the other real benefit of having two agents involved, is that you'll get somebody on your side and ultimately helping get what you want in the transaction. Or if you want to buy one of my listings, that's great news. I would just suggest you write an offer with one of my other team members rather than myself. Want to talk more about buying or selling real estate in 2025? Well, then reach out to our team at 608-440-9886 or send us a message. After all, everyone deserves a good deal when buying or selling. But beyond that, everyone deserves fair representation.